We're up to Daf Yomi Beis on the bottom, but yesterday we finished with the currency of Rome.
Stop.
Huh?
Stop.
Rega, before we start, can we show? Are we rolling?
Yeah, we're rolling.
Okay, can we show Reb Daniel Aguilar's incredible photo?
Oh wow!
It's the cover. This is me speaking at the Siyum Hashas at MetLife Stadium in 2020, my moment of fame, and. We're thinking of like a cover. So Daniel said, I don't know, maybe you're too humble for this. I said, no, I'm not too humble for this. You can put this cover. Not a humble guy at all. Maybe he came just in time to witness my moment of fame at the Siyum Hashas. Yeah.
That's cool.
I was there.
Okay, so
I didn't speak from the podium though. It's a Shem. The coming Siyum Hashas. Yeah, I'll speak from the podium. Yeah. I'll the hadron. Yeah, there'll be. You know what I thought? I thought that if I speak at the Siyum Hashas, that'll be the biggest mechayev for me to start learning Daf Yomi, right? And this was in 2020. Yeah, so I started brachas. By the time I was up to Daf Yud, I was off the bandwagon.
It wasn't even about Shabbos B'Menucha.
It wasn't even about Shabbos B'Menucha. Yeah, that's a very good joke. But what I realized was, if you want to be consistent in the daf, for it to be yomi, the best way to do it is accountability. To have someone, and the truth is, in our shiur, all of you are holding me accountable every night, because I know you're counting on me delivering the daf. So I'm very grateful. But speaking to 100,000 people, even that won't do it. Even that is not going to do it. Please, not for me.
Got accountability buddy.
Accountability buddy. Accountability buddy. Is that you're just machadish it right now?
No.
Okay. Very good, Nathan. The other thing I wanted to show you is, yesterday we finished a shiur talking about the currency of Rome and how their currency was Yotza B'chala Olam, and that's why they're greater than Paras. Shavar Malka is not as great as Kesar, right? That was the last piece in the Gemara. Where did I just put this? So I was just in Rome. We're filming our Tisha B'Av documentary on the Kalim. So our production manager bought me a gift. Thank you. Hashkifa.com. For the millions of people watching the shiur. Yeah.
Link on the bottom.
Shameless plug. A link at the bottom, exactly. So somebody, Chazak v'yamatz. So somebody, my production manager, her name is Juby Charnowitz, bought me this gift after a trip to Rome. It's a coin from Rome that they printed and minted in the first century. It was a symbol of conquest of the Jews in Yerushalayim, and it was called Judea Capta. That was the name of the coin. You can actually look it up online. Wow. They found ancient coins in Rome that had a picture of a Jew handcuffed under a palm tree as a slave. Judea Capta. That's what it's called. And this was how they wanted to lower the morale of Jews and have them give up hope. So what's really interesting is that when Israel celebrated its 10th year anniversary of the state of Israel, they took that coin, that image of whatever the Romans had almost 2,000 years ago on their coin, celebrating the conquest of Jews, and they printed that on one side of the coin, and on the other side, they showed a woman giving birth. They have like a picture of a mother holding a baby under the palm tree to say that we are back, we've been revived almost after 2,000 years. So here's an original coin from 1958. This is how they printed it. This is, on one side, they have minted over here the image that the Romans minted on their coins called Judea Capta. Yeah? I don't know if you could see.
It's going a little autofocus.
Let me see. Okay. I don't know if you can see it this way. But either way, and on the other side, you have a guy planting a tree, and you have a mother holding a baby. Yeah, so it's really cool. I'll pass it around here. It's an original from 1958. Yeah. On one side, it's the Yashka. So Yotza Tiva B'Chala Olam. They tried 2,000 years ago to let us know that we're over with. And Baruch Hashem, we have we're going stronger than ever before. Here, pass it to the doctor. Let the doctor take a look at it.
So this is the actual, like Roman, like was the Roman one?
This is in 1958. They minted.
I know, but they
Got it on
they
eBay.
copied-
This is, you can't get this anywhere, but
I know, they copied the Roman.
they copied on one side what the Romans minted on their coins after the Churban, which is Judea capital. Jews are over with, and then in 1958, on the other side, they had under that same palm tree, so to speak, they had a mother holding a baby and a guy planting a tree. Kacha. Okay. But the main thing is that we're sitting here still learning Torah. That's really what it's all about. This is what it's about. So the Gemara says like this. We're going back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah said we're 6 or 7, 8 lines from the bottom of Avamid Beis. As sheyesh bo yediyah betchila, v'yediyah b'soy v'helam b'ntayim. If a person knew that he was tamei and then he forgot he was tamei, he ate hektish and then he remembered, that's the case of oil v'yored. That's when he brings an oil v'yored. Tanu Rabbanan. So the Gemara wants to know minayin she'eina kosav medaber elo b'tumas migdash v'kedoshav. How do we know when you look at the psukim in the Torah, the psukim that say that he's tamei, and we learn and understand that those psukim are talking about he walked into the Azara, right? And Rab Shaul was bothered by this concept. How could you walk into the Azara b'tumah? You could forget that you're tamei, but to forget that that's the Azara, remember you asked me that?
Yeah.
That's Hela Mikdash. To forget that's the Azara, how does that ever happen? I saw Rav Elyashiv asks you kasha, by the way. He asks, how could a person ever walk into the Azara and forget it's the Azara, the Beis HaMikdash? How is that ever shaykh? You went on the Azara, you had 1,000 reminders. He says, just like a person walks into a shul with a phone. Yeah? No different. Yeah, you get used to it. The koyach hergel, right? Doesn't matter what bells and whistles you have to build the momentum of walking into the Makom HaKadosh, the holiest place in the world. But hergel, the koyach hergel is that you'll forget and you'll just treat it. That's why the Harabayas had certain halachas you couldn't walk in with your shoes, just to remind you, because you needed those reminders. But either way, the Mishnah says, when do you bring a carbon oil of a yared? You bring a carbon oil of a yared if you remembered your tummy, then you forgot your tummy, and then you remembered again. So Tanu Rabbanan asks the Gemara, Menayin she'eina kosav, we just started. Menayin she'eina kosav medaber elo b'tumas mikdash v'kedoshav. How do we know, when you look at the psukim, that this is the case, that the chait was that he forgot that he's tamei and he walked into the Beis HaMikdash? It doesn't say mefurish in the pasuk. It says, v'hu tamei, he touched a nivlas odom or a sheretz and he's tamei, then he has to bring a carbon oil of a yared. It doesn't say what he did wrong. Maybe all he did was, he became tamei. That itself could be a chait. That itself could be an aveira sometimes. Yeah, Rashi says that itself, maybe the negiah itself is also problematic. Why would the negiah itself be problematic? When do we find that touching a nevela and becoming tamei should be an issue? So over here they bring down, maybe Yisrael Bizman HaRegel, there's a special chiyuv to protect yourself, to stay b'tahara, because you have to be the regel, or sometimes you have kohanim, right, with tumas meis, there's a special azara. So sometimes you can have, the negiah alone is mechayiv you a carbon oil of a yared. How do you know the carbon oil of a yared in the pasuk is talking about only if you became tamei, you forgot and you walked into the Beis HaMikdash or you ate hektish? How do you know that's the case? It's not mefurash in the Torah, it's not mefurish.
It's the idea, elem davar.
So maybe you forgot that you...
Elem, this is the korban. The elem is the korban. And you bring korban for the elem.
So there has to be a forgetful period.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So the Gemara wants to know, how do you know that while he forgot, he walked into the Beis HaMikdash, or he ate kachem b'tumah? Maybe it's not that. Maybe you don't need that. Maybe you just need a helm, and that's it. That's the Gemara's question. Okay, says the Gemara, I'll tell you how I know that was the chet. V'dinu, it's a svara. Hoil hizr v'onash. Alatoma, since you find the Torah gave a azhara of chorus on somebody who's over on Isser Tumah b'mezid, so by the mezid we know that the Torah is mefurish that he walked into the Beis HaMikdash, Tumas Mikdash v'kedoshav. That was the chet. So v'chi of carbon alatoma, and so too when Torah is mechayiv carbon, makshe hizr v'onash alatoma, the hizr v'onash alatoma Mikdash v'kedoshav, av carbon alatoma l'chi alatoma Mikdash v'kedoshav. We compare it to chorus to a mezid. Just like by a mezid we know that the chet is he walked into the Beis HaMikdash or he ate hektish b'tumah. So too, when it talks about a shoygig, Hagam, it's not mafurish in the pasuk what he did wrong, but we compare it to a mazid, and by mazid it's pretty mafurish. Asks the Gemara, the aim of truma, maybe the carbon oil of a yored that we're talking about by a shoygig is because he ate truma b'shoygig, because shehizir v'anash, the Torah also warned and punished somebody who eats truma b'mezid. So compare it to truma b'mezid and say that the carbon oil of a yored is for eating truma b'mezid, not for walking into the azara or for eating hektish. Maybe you just compare it to truma and say that the isra, the chet, that you give a oil of a yored for is for truma. So says, like ashkan avon misa dechayv ale carbon. No, we don't want to plug truma into this pasuk because truma gets misa b'dei shamayim. It's not chayv karis, and by misa b'dei shamayim we don't find anywhere that you're chayiv on a shoygig a carbon chatas. An aveira that gets misa b'dei shamayim b'mezid, we don't find a chiyav carbon b'shoygig. So here, if the Torah is mechayiv you a carbon b'shoygig, it must be that the opposite would be a mezid of karis. What would be a mezid of karis? Tumas mikdash v'kedashav. So we compare that this must be also tumas mikdash v'kedashav b'shoygig. That's how we know it's talking about tumas mikdash v'kedashav. The oil of a yored is only a tumas mikdash v'kedashav. Asks the Gemara, Eima hanimili carbon kavua. When don't we find by truma b'mezid, by misa b'dei shamayim that you bring a carbon b'shoygig? That's a carbon kavua, chatas, a regular chatas. Yeah, it's a fixed carbon. So that's when you don't find. That's when you don't find avoin misa b'dei shamayim b'mezid doesn't bring a carbon chatas b'shoygig. Aval oil of a yored naisi midav hashmiyas kol v'abitus of asayim.
All of yored is be'elem.
Oil of a yored has nothing to do
with any of those.
Yeah, nothing to do. Sometimes you can bring an oil of a yored even if there's no chiyav karis on that aveira b'mezid. So if there's no chiyav karis on that aveira b'mezid, you could still bring a carbon oil of a yored. So maybe it's truma. Maybe it's truma. That's the kasha. Maybe the aveira we're talking about in the pasuk by oil of a yored is talking about eating truma. You'll tell me eating truma b'mezid is only misa b'dei shamayim, and we don't find by misa b'dei shamayim ever. If you do it b'shoygig, you bring a carbon. That's a carbon chatas you don't find, but a carbon oil of a yored you certainly find at times when you bring.
Shogeg זה אתה יודע. shogeg זה אתה יודע.
Yeah.
אלם אתה לא יודע. אלם דבר אתה לא יודע.
What do you mean? Shogeg, you also have a helam. No, you didn't know. If you knew it, then you're amazed.
Shogeg אתה...
איזה שוגג אתה יודע? איך אפשר לדעת לעבור אוויר בשוגג
אלם דבר זה היה אחרי
הידיעה. Okay, that's Mavriya. We learned that in the pasuk. That's true. Yeah. True. So you want to say it's mafurish on the word helam that we need a yediyah batchila, but the Gemara is trying to figure out how do I know that the pasuk of oil of a yard, the carbon oil of a yard we're talking about over here, is specific to the aveira of tumas mikdash v'kedashav. Where is it in this pasuk that it's tumas mikdash v'kedashav? So the Gemara says, you know why? Because I compare it to a mazid. By a mazid, I see you have karis and tumas mikdash v'kedashav. So the opposite is this parsha of carbon oil of a yard.
במזיד, בכל דבר שבתומת מקדש וקדשב, זה תמיד כרת. הכל הזמן כרת. במזיד. חייב מתעבדי שמיים, אוכל תומה בתומה, גם כן חייב מתעבדי שמיים.
Right. So the Gemara wants to know, maybe it's truma, like you're saying. Maybe it's truma. Gemara says no, because truma, the Gemara is not saying, Omar kro ba lemi'ute truma. So there's a pasuk, there's a word in the pasuk that's mamaya truma. So Gemara says, Ema ba lemuta mikdash. How do you know it's mamaya truma? Maybe you've been mamaya mikdash. The Gemara says, the leisagile bekarban oil of a yored. Maybe if you are shoygig on tumas mikdash v'kedash, it's not enough to bring a carbon oil of a yored. Adam ma'aser karba kavui, mamash need a chatas, right? A chatas is more than an oil of a yored. Why? Because the oil of a yored is a kula. Oil of a yored depends on the finances of an ani and an usher. So maybe tumas mikdash v'kedash is so chamor that it's not enough to bring a carbon oil of a yard, because there an ani can bring a cheaper carbon. Maybe that needs a chatas kavua, a chatas which has a fixed amount for both. So maybe that.
is more lenient.
is not a fix.
Right. So maybe.
LM is more lenient.
Right. So oil of a yard is a more lenient carbon.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe oil of yard is enough for truma b'shoigig, because truma b'shoigig is a easier avera, because you only get misa b'dei shemayim on that b'mezid. But if you would get karas b'mezid, then b'shoigig you'd have to get.
Helem is less than shogig.
I don't know what helem means less than shoigig. I don't know what that means.
Kavana sheli meaning b'shogig.
The helem just means forgetting. When you're referring to helem, what do you mean?
Helem meaning I you know.
But shogig is Shabbos. Like you forgot it's Shabbos. You forgot that the smoke is also.
Right.
So that's a classic shogig.
Right.
So you knew it. You had the idea, but you just momentarily you blanked out.
Right.
So it's not helem. Helem is
You had a longer period of forgetfulness.
It's a good
Okay, we need proofs for all these, whatever we're saying in terms of helem. We need gemaras to back us up. We can't just say our own svaras. But helem, pashtus means that when you did the aver, you forgot about your tumah. You forgot about that state you're in. I don't know how long it lasted. It lasted for the duration of the avera. How long did it take to step into the azara? It takes a second. One step over the threshold of the harabayas, but tumah is already b'mezid is karis and b'shoigig is a carbon. So either way, the Gemara says that the carbon oil of a yored maybe is for truma. How do you know that it's for the aveira of tumas mikdash v'kedashav? It's not before in the Torah what aveira you bring a carbon oil of a yored in the parsha.
Shogig, I did not know that it's truma.
How long do you say time?
Right. You had a helem that it's truma. Maybe that's the case.
It's not helem. I did not know it's truma.
No, they had a helem that you're tummy. The pasuk is talking about the nelem, the loyod. He didn't know he's tummy. He forgot that he's tummy. He knew it's truma, but he forgot he's tummy.
I understand, but I'm talking about. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. Okay. Says the Gemara. How do you know that you are marba tumas migdash v'kedoshav and you're mamayet truma? So the Gemara says kari rov ali de Rabbi doila maya miboyrus amukim. Rava complimented Rabbi and said that Rabbi is the one who can draw water out from a deep well. It's an analogy for Rabbi's incredible depth in Torah. Because Rabbi was able to find a makar, how we know that the pasuk by a carbon oil of a yored is talking about the aveira of tumas mikdash v'kedashav and not truma. How do we know that? The Tanya. Rabbi said, Ekra nichaya, when the Torah is talking about Toma, the parsha of carbon oil of a yored, it says that he touched a chaya tmeya or nivlas behema tmeya. Behema lama nemra. Why does the Torah have to specify behema if behema usually we know is bechlal chaya? It's an extra word. It says the Gemara nemra kan behema tmeya, the nemra lahalon behema tmeya. Ma lahalon tumas kodesh, avkan tumas kodesh. By basar shlomim, guy eats b'mezid basar shlomim betumam. So it says over there behema tmeya. And over there, it's clear that he ate basar shlomim be-tuma, b'mezid. So over there, it's clear that the isser is tumas mikdash v'kedoshav, tumas kedoshav. So we make gzeir shava, mala halon, tumas kodesh, afkan, ba'oil of a yored. There's a word behema, so we know it's talking about tumas kodesh. So basically, Rebbe is giving us gzeir shava. So I don't understand. The Ritva asks, the Rishonim ask over here, what's Rava complimenting Rebbe for? Rebbe is so great. He can draw water out from deep wells. How? Because he had a Messiah from Gzeir Shava. You know, ain't no done Gzeir Shava Matzma. You can't dash Gzeir Shava yourself. So all Rebbe did was pass down a Messiah from Gzeir Shava, and Rav was all impressed. Ritva says, what's there to be impressed about? I mean, I'm sure Rebbe was great in Torah. We know. But why is that? Doila Mayim Ibayr Samukim. So the Ritva says, because not every Gzeir Shava was clear. Like we knew the words, but we didn't know with regard to what halacha. Like the Gzeir Shava was, there's a Gzeir Shava behema. We're not sure where that behema is. What's mufna, what's not mufna. Rebbe had to really go through all the words in the Torah and to really draw out which one, to identify which word, which behema, and which parsha the Gzeir Shava was, and what it teaches us. So that was the greatness of Rebbe. So the Gemara says, Ashkan Tumas Kodesh. I understand Tumas Kodesh. Tumas Migdash Minolan. Tumas Kodesh means you're eating Hekdesh Betuma. But how do I know if you're walking into the Azara Betuma, that's not included in that Gzeir Shava? It's Gemara Amakra b'chol kodesh l'sigal hamikdash le'isavai. There's another pasuk. It says b'chol kodesh l'sigal le'isavai. Iskish migdash l'kodesh. The Torah is makish migdash l'kodesh. Just like by kodesh, you bring a carbon oil of a yored b'shaygig. So too, if you come into the base of migdash, you bring a carbon oil of a yored b'shaygig. Asks the Gemara Yichad Truma Nami. Truma should also be included in that hekish. The Amar Mar. What's the pasuk you're making a hekish from? B'chol kodesh l'sigal. And b'chol kodesh l'sigal l'rabas at truma. So truma should also be included in the carbon oil of a yored because that's included in that hekish, in that source hekish. Mar says no, that can't be included because himiyat rachmana ba. The Torah is already memayit in the parsha of carbon oil of a yored ba daf ketumas kodesh, but not achilas truma. So the Gemara says yeah, but we asked ema ba lemiyute mikdash. Maybe it's coming to be memayit mikdash. How do you know it's coming to be memayit truma? Maybe make the hekish from truma to kodesh, because b'chol kodesh is ma'ar truma. So you have two different cases that is learned from the same pasuk. How do you know to be mamayit truma, be ma'ar b'hekdesh, be ma'ar b'truma, be mamayit mikdash? Says the Gemara Mistaber mikdash lo matina shekem b'koros kamaisa. It's too similar. We want to make sure it's similar to the hekish of kodesh. So we want to make sure we do something that's similar. It's the same oynish. B'mezid, they both get karas. Adarabah, truma loy matina shekein achila kamay. So what do you mean? Truma has also a characteristic that is common with achilas hekdesh betuma. Why? Because they're both achila. Elam Rava, so Rava says, you know what? I have another makar. How I know that there's a chiv carbon oil of yored betumas mikdash. Again, tumas kodesh we know because it's exer shava behema. That was Rebbe's chiddush, right? Rava complimented Rebbe on that. I know that tumas kodesh eating hekdesh betuma b'shoigig. I know brings a carbon oil of a yored. That's what the pasuk is talking about because exer shava behema. But how do you know tumas mikdash? Gemara what tonight? Tumas mikdash is maybe from a hekesh b'chal kodesh l'siga. The Gemara doesn't like it because then maybe it's truma, not hekdesh. Ela marava. We're going to another option of a teretz. Sholosh krisis b'shlamim lama. There are 3 psukim that talk about eating hekdesh betuma. Yeah, b'mezid. Yeah, let's pull up the 3 psukim. 3 psukim in 3 different places.
Which we'll talk about v'nichrasa.
In the Torah, v'nichrasa.
Yeah.
It says the word v'nichrasa 3 times. It says kol ish hashiyikam v'kol ziracham al kachim b'tamosei olav v'nichrasa. It says karas once. Again, we're talking about somebody who is eating hekdesh betuma. Second place, again v'nichrasa. And then the third place is so the Rava says sholish krisis b'shlamim lama. Why does the Torah have to repeat over and over and over again the word v'nichrasa on the same avera? So the Gemara says achas lechlal. So the first one is coming lechlal. Ela kachim. It doesn't tell you. It doesn't specify what kind of kachim you ate betuma b'mezid. So the word v'nichros in the first pasuk is telling you lechlal that any kachim that are nechel betuma you get kares for. The second one va'achas. The second one is leprat. The second one already specifies what kind of kachim. It says mezevach hashlamim asher laHashem. So here, once we specify, you narrow it down. There's a midah that the Torah's Midrash is called klal prat, right? So klal prat, you see that it's not any kachim that we're talking about. It's a kachim that is doimel shlamim, that is similar to shlamim. So now va'achas letuma ksuva b'Torah. Now the third one seems to be redundant. Seems to be extra. There's another v'nichrasa here. Oh, so havi omer ve'ini de'emau. Yeah, va'achas letuma ksuva b'Torah stam ve'ini de'emai. Havi omer tumas kodesh. So it must be tumas kodesh. You ate hekdesh betuma, but v'me'eni inyan tumas kodesh denafkelei mederebi. But I already know tumas kodesh. How do I know tumas kodesh b'shoigig? Yeah, because I already know behema. So then Taneu inyan tumas mikdash. There's a whole roundabout way what we do with the third v'nichros. So the third v'nichros is coming to teach you that tumas mikdash b'shoigig you're chayiv a carbon oil of a yored for. Okay, I wish I had another chart to show you how it works. There's a third v'nichrasa, right? This third v'nichrasa is extra. I don't need it here because I already know b'mezid. You get any on eating kachim b'mezid. I already know any kachim that's doimel l'shlamim you get karas for. So what's the third v'nichrasa for? So the third v'nichrasa is another way to darshan the Torah is in Eina Inyan. If I don't need it over here, so I'll use it for somewhere else. What am I going to use it for? Tumas kodesh. But tumas kodesh I don't need it either for. You know why? Because I already have behema from Rebbe. So then apply it to tumas mikdash b'shoigig that you get. You bring a carbon oila v'yored for. Very interesting. So that extra word teaches you a carbon oila v'yored for tumas mikdash. Asks the
carbon oila v'yored לכפר על האלם. אין שם כרת.
Correct. The word v'nichrasa is talking about, teaches you for a carbon oil of a yored.
Interesting.
Very interesting. That's the chiddush. That in Eina Inyan, Taneu Inyan, this extra word is teaching me something. What's it teaching me? Right. It's teaching me on something that you would get. Karas b'meizadan, you should bring a carbon oil of yored b'shoigig over there. Yes. Asks the Gemara, "V'haimi boile l'kadir bavo domer bavo sholish creases b'shlomim loma." What do you mean? I already use it. It's already occupied. We can't use the third v'nichrasa. Why? Achas lechlal v'achas leprat v'achas ledvarim she'eina necholin. Yeah, that you're getting chorus for even if you eat something which is not roy lachila. Let's say you chew on the levina or the ketairis, some spices. I don't know, you chew on the atzei hamaracha, right? You're chewing on kachim that is not roy lachila. How do you know you get v'nichrasa? That's the third v'nichrasa. The third v'nichrasa I need to teach me that even if it's not roy lachila, you'll still get chorus if you do it b'mezid. In according to Shimon, who doesn't hold your chayiv chorus on it, so what's he going to learn with the third v'nichrasa? That he's marba the chatz apnimis, l'moshel the soyer laHashem that completely gets consumed on the mizbeach and gets sprinkled from in the heichal, the paroiches and the kodesh hakadoshim. The sagat chamino hoyvam Reb Shimon kol shein korban mizbeach achitzin kishlamim ein chayav and olav misham pigul, that any korban that doesn't get nikrav on the mizbeach achitzin kishlamim doesn't have the chi of pigul. So maybe over here also mishum tumah namiloi kamash mishum tumah namiloi. Maybe by tumah you'd also not be mechuyev on eating the sorel Hashem, because you see that the sorel Hashem is different, separated in halach and other halachas. Kamash malam the mechayev. The chiddush is that he's chayev anyways chorus if he eats from the sorel Hashem from chatas apnimis. So here, either way, I need the third v'nichrasa for other drushes, whether it's like Rabbi Gold that you chayiv chorus on dvar she'ein necholin, or it's like Reb Shimon on the chatas apnimis, but it's not available to teach me tumas mikdash. So how could the Gemara say that v'nichrasa is teaching me tumas mikdash for a carbon oil of a yored? Answers the Gemara, let's pull up the second chart. Here, the same psukim, forget the word v'nichrasa 3 times. You see the word v'tumasai is repeated once, twice, and tomei another time. So we're going to resort to the third tumasai. One is to tell you that tuma, if you're eating tuma, if you're eating kachim b'tuma, any kachim, and the other one is to narrow it down to anything that's similar to zevach shlamim. Third one is available for the type of drasha that we just spoke about of Taneu Inyan. You go like to another place in the Torah, you pluck it out, or you use it to teach you in a different parsha. And what's that parsha? Tumas Mikdash. Tumas Mikdash, that even on that, you bring a carbon oil of yard. The mazid you'd get chorus, but now you bring a carbon oil of yard. The Hainami Maboyle asks the Gemara, what do you mean? It's also not available. I did the boile michtav chorus look at the Ravo because of nami tumas lo sagale belabachi. What do you mean? Once I need v'nichrasa, I need the v'tumasa to give me context, to tell me what's going on in the pasuk. It's not available. So once I need the v'nichrasa, the third v'nichrasa over here, to teach you the din of Ravo that you're chayiv even if you're eating davar she'ein ruyin lachila, right? So I have to know that you ate a b'tumah, so it's not available either. So the Gemara says that's also not available. Iksiv hasam elo merova asya tumasa tumasai. Oh, we go back to the pasuk over here by Oil of Yored, then we learn Gzeir Shava. Ksiv hacha lechol tamasai. Ksiv hasam tama yia oy tamasai boy. Mala alon tamas migdash avkan tamas migdash. By Parah Aduma it says that if somebody's a tomei mace, he's not allowed to go into the Azara, into the Beis Hamikdash as Mishkan Hashem Timei. So there it's clear in the pasuk by that word in that parsha where it says tamasai that we're talking about tamas migdash. Here too it's tamas migdash, and that's how we know Tumas Mikdash. So now, okay, the whole Gemara in one sentence, okay? If you haven't followed half of what I said, or 3/4 even, here, just this sentence will get you right back on track. Gemara is saying, we bring a carbon oil of a yored, right? If you make a mistake in terms of walking into the Beis Hamikdash b'tumah, or if you eat hekdesh b'tumah, how do I know that the pasuk that talks about the carbon oil of a yored, that you have to bring a carbon b'shoigig, is talking about those two cases? How do I know? Right? Maybe it's truma, maybe it's other case. How do I know? It's not before in the pasuk that that's your avera. That your avera is that you walked into the Beis Hamikdash b'tumah b'shoigig, or you ate hekdesh b'shoigig. So here we have two gzeir shavas from the words in those psukim that deal with the carbon oil of a yored to teach you each halacha. So Rebbe comes up with the Gzeir Shav of Behema Behema. Behema Behema teaches you Tumas Kodesh. And Rava comes up with another Gzeir Shav of Tumas Mikdash. Tumasai, from Tumas Meis, it says, it's Mishkan Hashem Timei, and over here in our parsha it also says Tumasai, so you know Tumas Mikdash. So basically, Tumas Mikdash V'Kadoshav brings Oil of Yored. How do I know that? Even though it's not Mefurish in the parsha of Oil of Yored, it's because we have two separate Gershavas, Behema from Rebbe, and Tumasai of Rava. That's basically the whole Gemara we just saw. Ve'ela ba lamali. So what's the ba coming to teach you? The Gemara says, L'rabbis nivlas oiftar. The word ba is coming to teach you that you bring a carbon oil of a yored even if your tumah comes from an achilas nivlas oiftar. Very interesting. A nivlas oiftar, right? If you have a dead kosher bird, oiftar, it's not matama b'maga. If you touch it, you don't become tummy. It's matama b'beis abliya, right? But beis abliya, it's matama. It's only matama if you eat it. So here, what if a guy ate nivlas oiftar, and that's how he became tummy, and then he walks into the Beis Hamikdash or eats hakdish? Says the Gemara, it's l'rabbis. Ba is coming to be marba, even such a type of tumah, you can bring a carbon oil of a yored. Asks the Gemara, Amr ba miyutahu. What do you mean? Ba sounds like a miyut, not like a riboy. Before you wanted to be mamai truma from ba, now you tell me it's marba nivlas oiftar. Says the Gemara, you're right. Mishim de mihuta yate. It's actually a miyut, but because it's a miyut, it's extra, and it becomes a riboy. Because iksiv oikiyiga. It says in the pasuk, only if somebody touches. It sounds like we're dealing with a nevela that's matama b'maga. I don't mean Trump's maga, yeah? Matama b'maga. It's matama with negiya. Bar negiya in the lav bar negiya loy. Something that's not matama b'negiya, not. So I already know it's excluding nivlas oiftar, because nivlas oiftar is not matama b'negiya. So iksiv ba miyuta. Why don't you need another miyut from ba? So here's the general rule: have a miyut achamiyut, ve'ein miyut achamiyut elo l'rabbis. It's coming to be marba. Always l'rabbis. So what is it coming to be marba? It's coming to be marba nivlas oiftar. By the way, it's a very interesting chakira, and the Rosh Yeshivas and the Welt and the Yeshiva Shevelt. When we say nivlas oiftar is matama b'beis abliya, what does it mean matama b'beis abliya? Is matama b'beis abliya because of the din achila? Or because there's a chiddush in the Torah that nivlas oiftar is not matama b'negiya unless it touches the beis abliya. That's the only sensitive spot in terms of tameh, that if it touches the beis abliya, that's when it's matame. So in other words, is it matam negiya? No pun intended. Matam negiya or matam achila, right? Which one is it? Is it because achila or negiya? And here in our Gemara, it's mamish clear, mefurish, that bar negiya in the la bar negiya loy. It's not because of a negiya, because that's the first miyat. It's miyat achamiyat. The first miyat is that it says oy ki yiga b'tumas adam. So that already excludes nivlas oiftar because it's not matama b'negiya. Mamish mefurish. It's not matama b'negiya. It's only matama b'achila. Why do you need another miyat? There it says ei miyat achamiyat elo l'rabbis. I want to take a moment just to stop over here for a second and talk a little bit about before we move on to the Sorah Nasa Lefanim. I just want to talk about for a moment the idea of carbon oil of a yored. I was just mentioning to the doctor before we started the shiur that an oil of a yored is a very unique carbon. And we'll talk about it more in Mitzvah Shem in the next few blocks. Very unique carbon that usually you do an Aveira that b'mezit is karis. B'shoigig, what would you bring? What kind of carbon would you bring? You bring a chatas. And a chatas is a fixed carbon. It's prescribed in the Torah exactly what a chatas is. Right? Or it's a behema, whatever it is. Carbon oil of a yored is unique that it depends on your finances. If you're an ani, you could bring a menchasoilus, whatever you could bring an oif. If you're an usher, you bring a behema. So the question is how much of an ani, dali dalis, or just a dal. So there's a shaila on the Rishonim. Avada, if an usher brings a carbon ani, he's not yotza. Right? If you can afford the behema and you're an usher, you can't just be cheap and bring an oif to the Beis Hamikdash for the carbon oil of a yored. If you're an ani, then you're allowed to bring cheaper carbon. What if an ani decides to stretch and bring a carbon of an usher that's more expensive? Is he yotza or not? So the Rambam says that about the yotza. An ani, usher that brings a carbon ani is not yotza, but an ani that brings a carbon usher is yotza. And the Chinuch Mitzvah Chav Gimel says not like that. And it says, if you could just pull it up, Ve'imhu ani. This is the Lashon Mechas Chinuch. Vehevi kisbay seira, and he brings a real fat sheep or goat. Yeah. Halacha is lo yotzi dechavasei. An oni who stretches and brings a more expensive carbon is not yotza. V'hatam lifisha'acher shirichem okel baruchu olav upatra bekach. If Hashem had mercy on you, Hashem said, "Look, I'll be appeased with the cheaper carbon."
And you don't have rachaim on yourself.
If Hashem has rachmanis, einoi bedin sheyitchik atzmoi lohavi beyosim hashatasik yodoi. Should go overspend. So we're talking about overspending, and I just listened to a podcast of I think it was like Living L'Chaim. Somebody was talking about the whole Jewish world is overspending. Everybody's going to Florida and going on vacations they can't afford, and it's a machla. It's a machla in the Jewish world that people are spending. They have to keep up with the Joneses and have to drive certain cars and live in certain types of homes and wear certain designer suits, even if they can't afford it, just to put up this image. And if by a mitzvah, by a oil of a yored, what we see over here in the chinuch is that you're not yoitza even a carbon, even if it's l'shem shemaim, you want a better kapara. Hashem says, "No, I'm a racham on you. You don't overspend it." Certainly, in terms of gashmias, you shouldn't do it. The Zohar actually asks, how could it be that you need a kapara, right? Let's say a guy has an ailment, right? And doctor prescribes a medication. The medication costs $1,000. It doesn't matter if you're an ani or an usher. You got to get the money because that's your medicine. How could it be? The Zohar asks, how could there be two different medications for the same healing, for the same spiritual healing, for the same avera? This whole concept of oil of yored, the Zohar struggles with. You'll like this. The Zohar struggles. How can you have an oil of yored? Usually it's a chatas. It's a prescribed medication, fixed medication. I don't know if you can afford it. You can afford the treatments. You can't afford the treatments. You got to do what you got to do. Yeah. How many people are collecting for their medical bills? They got to do it. There's only one trufah. So how can it be an oil of yored for different people? And so the balei soid. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but there's a svara to it. There's logic to it. The Alisoid say that certain averis are done, the motivation is arrogance. Gasus ruach. An usher is motivated by arrogance. So for arrogance, you got to bring a festa behema. You got to bring a big behema, because even though on the outside we both did the same thing, different motivations. And it's really a different illness. It comes from a different place. So an usher brings, a big behema, an oif for arrogance doesn't work. That medication doesn't work. An ani, his comes from yish. There's no arrogance for an ani, right? His is shvir salev. Yeah, it's like nebuch tzebrochen. He can't afford what the other guy affords. He's hopeless. So his tikkun is, bring your oif, whatever you can bring, be mesameach with it. That's the tikkun. To bring it b'chefetz leiv, ma'avas Hashem, whatever you got, you bring that. You bring that. So Mamela, what's going to happen if the ani stretches and he brings a carbon of an usher? Now he has more bills. He's got to worry to pay off the debt. And he's not bringing it b'chefetz leiv. He's not bringing it metoich ava. So the logic dictates, says the chinuch, according to the chinuch, there's another svara. Why an ani cannot be yotze the carbon usher? Because the ailment, the illness, spiritually came from a different place. It came from yish and shvira salev. So the tikkun has to be daika through an oiv, daika through the carbon of an ani, and not from the carbon of an usher. That's how they want to explain it.
A little different twist. There's difference between a choik, edus, and mishpat. The chok we know is just v'zeres HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Okay.
One might fall into the groove of thinking that a toloi, Ashim toloi, is based on Rachmanis. Because Ashim toloi is not Machaper.
Right.
It's only a temporary band-aid until the emes and var.
Right.
So you have to know that one may think that Ashim toloi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Merachim, and because in Merachim, I'm an ani, so I can take it easy because the Kodesh Baruch has Rachmanis on me. So I don't have to give so much attention to it. No, I would be mitzadi with chinuch, the fact that he has to know, it's a choik from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that this is how much he brings, And when he finds out, then he has to go back and bring the korban chatas.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So it's not based on Rahmanos.
No, but we're talking about, okay, it's you're right, it's a chayk, you're saying it's a chayk, that's what you want to say. Beautiful, okay.
So that's why he's not
Yored,
Yotzei.
no?
We're talking about Oil of Yored over here, right. We're talking about Oil of Yored.
לא אשם תלוי.
Same thing, you're saying it's a chayk also by Oil of Yored. That's the chayk. Okay, beautiful, okay. I think it's a mokim l'sgada, but everybody can say their own pshatim, and you have shivim panim. Right, depends. Yeah. Let's see weiter. Let's just get at least halfway through this daf. Yesh ba yediyah b'tchila ve'ein ba yediyah b'soif. So we said that an oil of a yored is only if you have a yediyah b'tchila yediyah b'soif and you have a halam bin time, a forgetfulness in the middle. What if you have a yediyah b'tchila but you don't have a yediyah b'soif? Right, you did the aveir but you never found out about it. So the Mishnah said, soy hanasa b'fnim, that's mechaper. That's toila. That protects you from Yisurim until you find out, and then you bring an oil of a yored. Ton Rabbanon says in the Torah, v'chipra ala kodesh mitum b'nei Yisrael, it says by the soyer, la Hashem, that it's mechaper mitumas b'nei Yisrael. Says the Gemara, yesh li b'nei lohavi, sholish tumas. What kind of tumah is it talking about? Mitumas b'nei Yisrael. We don't know. Torah is vague on the tumas b'nei Yisrael that the soyer la Hashem is mechaper on Yom Kippur, which is, by the way, this week's parsha, right? This week's parsha, Parsha's Acharei Mois, is the parsha where the Kohen Gadol brings, so geshmak to have the daf on a sugya in this week's parsha. So it says metumos. It doesn't say which one. So Gemara says yeshli beinzel havi sholosh tumas. I have three places, three different tumas I can bring you. Tumas avodah zara, tumas gilei arayis, tumas shvichas dam. Avodah zara I'm leman tames mikdash. It's called tumah. Gilei arayis so I'm leman shmart tumas shmarti levuti asois mechukas at eivos lo tamu behen. Also tumah. Shvichas dam I'm lo tames oretz. Yochoyla sholosh tumas haloli yesoyer mechaper. Maybe in all these gimel chamuros. By the way, there are 100 places where the Torah uses tumah by other averos. Asks Tosfos, akati ikatuva, where it says tumah in the Torah. Why does the Gemara choose only these three? So Tosfos says to show you afal pi shehein chamuros, right? Because these are the worst averos. And so when we're mamayit them, this is not what we're referring to. Certainly we're not referring to other averos. So the Gemara says, no, it's not referring to these three tumas, and it's not referring to other tumas. If it's not referring to chamuras, it's certainly not referring to other ones. So which one is referring to? Metumas b'nei Yisrael v'loy kol tumas. Only some and not others. So which one? Now we have to choose from all the tumas in the Torah, which tumah is Sor la Hashem mechaper for? It says the Gemara, Ma metzinu shechilak hakosov meklal kol tumas. What did we find that the Torah, like the Torah was mechalik in the halachas from other tumas, because it brings a carbon oil of yored. You don't need the mamatzinu. Even without a mamatzinu, I know we're talking about tumas mikra kadasha because it says in the pasuk, v'chipar ala kodesh mitumas, mitumas shal kodesh. It says clearly in the Torah, v'chipar ala kodesh. It means any tumah mitumas hakodesh tumas mikra kadasha. That's Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon sees in the pasuk. Yochel akol tumas shabakodesh yisrael mechaper. So I would have thought that any variation, whether it's yediyah betchila and besoif and halam bintayim, maybe also that's that the soyer la Hashem is mechaper for. You don't need a carbon oil of a yored. Yeah, tamid loimim b'sheim l'chol chatoisam chatoim dum yud pshoim. It compares pshoim to chatoisam. Ma pshoim. Yeah, ma pshoim she'ena b'nei carbon. Af chatoim she'enam b'nei carbon. What kind of chatoim are not b'nei carbon? Yeah, what kind of chatoim are not b'nei carbon? The type of tumah that's yediyah betchila, the yediyah besoif, because that's already a carbon oil of a yored. That's mechuyev in a carbon oil of a yored. So it has to be a type of aveira that isn't subject to a carbon oil of a yored. So therefore you can include yediyah betchila, yediyah besoif. Amenayin yesh ba yediyah betchila ve'em be yediyah besoif shesor zeh toila. How do I know that it's only toila and it's not mechaper legamri? Tamid loimer lechol chatoisam chayovay chatois b'mashma. In other words, it works for chatoisam, for people are still chayev v'chatas, which means this case of yediyah betchila, and you haven't found out yet, but when you find out, you have to bring a chatas. So only on that case is the soyer la Hashem, does the soyer la Hashem work for. It only works on a case of yediyah betchila, the ein yediyah basayif. I just want to end with this. Actually, so what did we get up to on the daf? Okay, we'll stop over here. We'll end over here. Okay, Shekoyach, we'll see you tomorrow. Yitz Hashem.